Zulk broke off the story. The tavern was quiet as everyone was enthralled by Zulk's strange tale. Darrell was watching a stranger who sat at the bar with a large, broad-brimmed hat that concealed his face and who was intently listening to Zulk's story. When the stranger's eyes met Darrell's gaze, he quickly turned back to the bar. Zala asked Zulk, "What do you know of the Inhartress magic powers?"
Whatever powers the Inhartress have, I do not know, nor do I ken what now her powers be. But the Neolith Skull Wizards quickly put her in elven silver chains that they attached to her wrist to to a band around her neck. They believed that the chains would ground her powers and she would not be able to use her powers against them. They forced her to by using electrical singing rods and whips to follow them into a cage they prepared for her. She was still weak from her creation, and they easily pushed into the cage, her into the cage. Then locked the gate and began chanting to seal her powers. They wanted only to teach the hunters to magic that they could control. Malaka who told me this story was a slave girl forced to work for Valbeg, but not long ago, I said she stayed in my tavern and she told me about the wizards awfully mistreated the Inhartress with beatings and curses while sending bolts of electricity and electric fire from their rods into her body that caused her to howl and writhe in pain. Falbeck had Malaka daily go into the cage and with food and drink for an Inhartress. She told me that the first time they forced her into the cage with that monster, she was terrified that Inhartress would tear her to pieces. She was shocked by the sense of quietness she felt as she placed on the tray before the evil creature. When she looked at the serpent's eyes of the Inhartress, she saw the creature was pleading for her help. Perhaps it was the cunning of the Inhartress to befriend the slave girl that led to her freedom. The weeks passed, and in spite of the cruelty and mistreatment of the Inhartress began to discover her power. She discovered that their insults were empty words, and she discovered how to prevent the electric rods from causing her pain. While this scent went on, Felbeck and Malaka daily go into the cage with food and drink for an Inhartress.
Zulk paused, took a big drink from the mug, and signed Kyra for another round. Darrell shook his head.
You make an Inhartress seem evil, not seem evil.
To this, Zulk replied,
She may not still discover her nature. For her part, Malaka made well with an Inhartress. She spent time with her, teaching her the Elven language, answering questions of how she came to be, and the world beyond the cage. Falbeck encouraged Malaka to gain the trust of the Inhartress and discover her powers. Every few days, the wizards would call Malaka into the cage and expect her to reveal what she had learned. If Malaka did not reveal any secrets, they would have the ogre's steward of the slaves, Piff, beat her until she was unconscious. Finding Malaka acted on the hope to escape Foulbake. And the oldest skull wizards had all gathered for the daily dark calling ceremony. They gathered in the great hall and danced around the pit, chanting all the night through and drinking the magical potions that gave them the visions. Near the dawn, they lay asleep in a sleeping stupor. Malaka quietly entered the hall and took the key from around Valbeck's neck. The old wizard pulled on his beard as if trying to hold the key that then rolled over onto his side with a grunt and began to snore. Malaka hurried through the keep to the Enchantress's cage. The Enchantress watched as she found the key and opened the lock on the cage. She stepped out of the cage and began to whisper, Now
you will leave this place." She took another key from the ring.
And opened the locks on the elven silver chains. The Enchantress looked at the elven girl and then stepped out of the cage and stretched her wings. Then leapt into the air and flew out of the chamber through the rock trusty and was gone. Malaka followed the Enchantress out of the cage and she heard angry cries down the hallway. And knew the wizards had found her treachery. The goblin guards raced into the chamber and grabbed the elf girl. Gomber, the master guard, cried out through his shiny helmet, Foulbag, Lord Foulbag. Then we have the traitor. The old wizard, still in his blue spell robes, panting, his exertion came into the chamber, his face contoured with a mixture of rage and fear. He pointed a extended electric rod at Malaka and slowly began to spat out each word. What have you done? He swung his rod at Malaka in rage and struck Malaka, who fell to her knees. She looked at Foulbag with a defiant expression. The other wizards entered the chamber. They saw the elf girl staring at Malaka, at Foulbag, and then they saw the empty cage. In unison, they began to yell, curse Malaka in the old wizard tongues. Malaka felt the spells descend on her as a hand was choking her around in the neck. She could not breathe. Foulbag raised the electric rod and shrieked, Now you must die. As the rod touched her, she felt a searing pain as her body was frozen and stiff and began to wildly shake. Malaka thought that she was gonna die, but suddenly the pain stopped, and she opened her eyes to see that Heartress was standing before her.
Zulk looked at Zella.
Now, now you have your answer, Princess Zala. For as the Heartress saw her beloved elf girl tormented by the wizards, something snapped in her brain, and then Heartress burst into a fire wheel, a torment of fire. Then Heartress spoke in the fire and commanded Malaka to flee the keep. Malaka ran for her life out of the keep. As she left, she saw the wizards shaken with fear around the Heartress as the rods raised at the Heartress, trying to protect themselves. As the Heartress ran, as Malaka ran out from the keep, everything turned bright and she heard a loud explosion. A wave of heat struck her and she fell to the ground. She turned to see a ball of fire floating out of the sky. The keep was gone. The Malaka feared that the Heartress had destroyed the wizards, but her fears fell away as she saw her beloved floating in a ball of fire. The Heartress flew to Malaka and stood before her friend.
My beloved, I'm so sad I did not return to you sooner.
Malaka ran to her Heartress and threw her hands around her.
Please come with me to the kingdom of the Dark Elves and stay with us.
That be the story told to me by Malaka and how the Heartress was created and went to stay in Merrick to live with the Dark Elves. Okay.